Hello everybody and welcome to another video with me. Today's video is entitled About Kids. I was very tempted to call it All About Kids, but I don't really know all there is to know about kids. So let's start with this particular sentence. I think people who don't have kids, who think they know about raising kids and about child development, but who haven't raised kids, should not interrupt real parents who have kids who are raising them on a daily basis. Now, with every parent, depending on where they come from, what their background, they have their own unique style and belief in how they raise kids. Discipline is one very important factor. There are different ways of communicating, of laying down the ground rules, setting limits, punishment, yelling, sending them to the rooms. It's all very unique from parent to parent, from family to family. Scaring. It may not be very relevant in this day and age, but I think it still is. Scaring. A child can sometimes be adopted by parents. This is a technique that I see a lot being practiced in the country where I live, and it's because generally it seems to work in inverted commas, because outwardly it makes the children obey, conform, and they are very well behaved. Point to consider. But we discipline our kids for a reason. We want them to be good. We want them to know the difference between right and wrong and not to do wrong, and later to make good decisions in life when parents are not around. There is a difference between raising a child who is afraid of getting into trouble but still hasn't learned, and raising a child who understands the difference between right and wrong. Now, I'm not going to go into various ways of disciplining your child and how to talk to your child, because seriously, I'm not a parent. But I'd like to talk about one factor, and that is, let's talk about scaring a child to make them do what you want to do. I've read and I've done some research that when a parent scares, when they threaten, when they shout, they do these things every time a child does not do what a parent expects, there is a change in the behavior. The child doesn't necessarily learn, but they'll make a mental list of everything that makes a parent angry. They'll make sure that the next time they do it, they don't let you catch them. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, they will still do it, even though you shout, but they'll make sure that you never find out about it. So it's a very slippery slope. This is because when you use scare tactics, threats, they'll stop noticing the effect that they are having on other people. They'll stop thinking and focusing on the effect of the behavior, and they'll focus on not getting into trouble. So they don't want to get into trouble, but they will still continue to do that behavior, except that they won't get caught by you. In front of you, that might seem like a good thing, because in front of you, all is well and they're behaving. But the second you're not there, the second you turn your back, that good behavior stops, because it was never learned. You see, despite all that disciplining, or rather that yelling, they haven't learned to appreciate what it is that you want to teach them. Now, let's do some other things. You see, as parents, we want to have our children behave a certain way. And sometimes we go all out to force them to behave a certain way. Experiments with children do suggest that if you force a child to do something, it's counterproductive. They'll do the bare minimum, and sometimes they won't do it because they just don't like being forced. But if you let them decide whether they want to do it or not, they may go beyond it. Sometimes when they find that they really like it, they'll go beyond it, and then they will do it out of choice. This is when they pass the point where they're not doing things to please you, but it's coming from them. And that's what you want. You want them to understand that the choices that they have come from them. But you as the parent are still around to point out when it's inappropriate and to make sure that they are guided. There are some other things that I recommend that you do in the course of this, and a disciplining or whatever way that you do has to be coupled with these things. There is something called listening, and listening to the child's message, listening to what the child says. Listening is a technique, because when you listen, you're giving them the chance to express themselves. They are going to indirectly tell you their needs, and those needs must be taken into account. Children also like to push the boundaries. So if they see that you're a pushover, they will try to push and take advantage. So you're listening with the love of a parent, but you're also showing them that you can't be taken advantage of. We would love our children to act in a certain way, and we would do everything we can to get them to act. And the older that they get, the less they're going to do what we expect. It's just like this. One of the most challenging ages is when they turn into adolescence. I must talk about emotion, because this is a very, very big part of it. You have to guide them on emotions. You have to guide them on understanding and addressing their emotions. There are experiences and experiments with children that emotions are a very big part of growing up. Children do get overly emotional at times, and they get extremely angry. They have impulses, and they may use their emotions to get their own way, to cry out for help, and also to wrestle control over from you. And sometimes they use emotions to manipulate. Now, that's one of the challenges of being a parent. With a child, it's not so much teaching them to control the emotion. It's not as simplistic as that. With a child, you have to cultivate your own style of helping them at that age to acknowledge the emotions. Why did you do that? Why did you behave in that way from that emotion? What were you actually feeling? What made you feel that way? And actually, you will see a pattern. Many of the urges and the emotions do come from fear. Even anger comes from fear at the heart. And a fear that they are not loved, fear they will lose something. At the heart of this veneer or this outside facade, you have to reassure them that you will always be there for them. They are always protected, and that they can always come to you. You have to guide them to feel the emotion, and yet gently guide them back into balance. So with a child, yes, there are emotions, but it's not so much controlling the emotions. It's not so much saying to the child, control your emotions, will you? They are at a learning stage. They're not adults yet. And you are both the coach as well as the guide, with a dose of strictness as well. I believe another aspect, another component that you need to put in the relationship is talk. And and this is not just empty conversation. It is a form of coaching. Talking with a child helps them think things through. So it's TTT, think things through, so that they can see. So it's sort of like a rewind on something which happened, and it didn't make sense because they were so in the moment, they were so into their emotions. So talking helps them to think things through. And that's why you bring up ethical dilemmas and scenarios like, something happened and you ask them. It's part of responsibility for them to understand what it is to face responsibility. So you can ask them any questions like, if you saw someone getting bullied, what would you do? And these are dilemmas and these are scenarios, and you would let your kids to figure it out. And you keep bringing it to a new level and guiding them to a new level. Listen to their thoughts. Do not judge. Share a few of their own to help them understand a perspective, and help them practice this mental process of seeing the world. It's a confusing world for children. They have a lot of resilience and capacity to deal with it. But that transition from being a kid and later they're going to become an adult, that is what you are here for as a parent. even mistakes, judgment and criticism, sometimes it's very counterproductive in the long run. You can also temper it additionally with what do you think you would do differently the next time you have a chance, and turn that moment into an actual opportunity. People who don't have parents, parents who don't have children, should not interrupt parents who are actually doing a good job. And every parent is doing a good job to the best of their ability. It is the hardest thing in the world to raise a child because it doesn't come with an instruction manual. All I know is I've heard many parents say, as frustrating and challenging as they find it, it's brought them a lot of satisfaction and reward, and the bond is always there, depending on the circumstances. Children, they copy their parents. It's a well-known thing. No matter how you act a different way and expect them to follow what you say, they're going to do exactly what you do. They rely on you, they look up to you, they want you there, and they will do the exact opposite of what you expect. The older they are, the more that they will do exactly what they want. Deep down, they do love you, and they secretly hope that you will never give up on them, that you will never abandon them, and that you will never push them away. They know that you are there. They hope that you will always be there, so that they can do all these wayward things and just figure out emotionally what it is to live in this rather confusing world. Why do you think it shatters children so deeply when parents separate or when the family breaks apart? And this is something that stays with a child for their entire lives. The relationship between parents and children is a very important one. Some of us may not have had ideal childhoods, and we grow up into adults and we are still harboring resentment and hate against our parents for the things that they did or the things that they didn't do, and the love that fell short. Interestingly, I have started to keep learning that the more we do not resolve these feelings between us and our parents, the less possible it is for us to move forward in life. And so mending that relationship and us, coming to terms with that relationship that you had with your parents when you were young is something that's very, very important for all human beings to do. At the end of the day, they did the best they could within the capacity of their parenting skills to do the best to bring up who you were. And you came into this world through them. As much negative emotion and challenges that you could have been through, you must allow yourself to take the time to reconcile any feelings of pain against parents. It's not easy sometimes, and it's one of the great learning experiences of life. Thank you for listening to these thoughts, and till the next video. Thank you. Blessings.